A Ripple employee literally confirmed what's coming, and it is very, very massive for not only XRP, but the entire crypto space. And it's going to change everything as well. So with that being said, welcome to the channel, everyone. My name is Nick. For those that are new to the channel, hopefully by the end of this video, you do become a subscriber. I don't want to waste any time. I actually want to talk a little bit more about a few things before we really get in to the specifics of what is happening, what's coming, and why this entire space and even XRP is going to change rapidly once we really start to see things happen around specific things like tokenization or transactional flows, things like that. So let's start off with this post here from Ripple, which is Ripple was out in full force at WebX Asia. SVP Ripple X dev Marcus Infinger took the stage discussing the growing opportunity for traditional finance with RWA tokenization, and they were honored to have SBI Holdings CEO and Chairman Yoshitaka Kateo stop by the Ripple booth as well. Now, remember that Marcus Infinger has been very vocal about what's happening around the XRP Ledger, and no, this is not the employee that I'm talking about, but we have See You Soon, Tokyo. Look at the names that were actually here at this event. It wasn't just, SBI Holdings CEO and Chairman. It was also MasterCard, Bank of Japan, and more. This was a very substantial event. And a lot of these events where we have speakers from Ripple talking about specific things like RWA tokenization or institutional DeFi and things like that, we have very large traditional financial giants from names like MasterCard or even central banks and things like that. Really kind of at these events present and also agreeing with these employees, which I find very interesting. But I also believe that we're on the cusp of institutions really taking this space seriously. And I also think that 2024 was the time frame where we started to see a major change. And that change was, instead of these institutions talking about embracing crypto technology or wanting to work with specific companies in the space, in 2024 we actually started to see them embrace it and also working with these companies, and they openly talked about it as well. So we're kind of starting to see the institutional side of things change rapidly around crypto. But also remember this, right? This just goes back to July. This is from Thinking Crypto 1, Tony Edwards podcast. We have Crypto Revolution, traditional financial institutions are embracing tokenization. And this is also from Marcus Infinger. Institutions such as BlackRock embracing tokenization is more bullish than the launch of the crypto ETFs. Check it out.
I very much welcome what we're seeing. And what I'm particularly excited about is, we've seen this year a clear shift from traditional financial institutions moving beyond the point of offering crypto as an investment class to their customers, but now they really want to make the move into solving actual frictions by entering to the game of tokenization. To give you an example, BUIDL by BlackRock has in many ways for me been a bigger deal than a spot Bitcoin ETF.
And it 100% is a bigger deal because think about what it does for all of the other big players waiting on the sidelines, trying to decide what they want to do. Tokenization has become almost a door that's been unlocked and opened for these big players to finally realize, like, all right, this is no joke and we could do this. We can finally tokenize within the space, just like BlackRock is doing. And they also realize, like, listen, BlackRock is BlackRock. Like, they don't lose, they don't miss out. And if they're taking this seriously, we have to start taking this seriously as well. And I feel as though that's why we're now starting to see a lot of these big institutions embracing the space with open arms and saying, that's it. This is the future. We need to take this seriously. Now's the time. And we're now at that point. But also, back in May, Marcus Infinger was the same individual that said, our meetings with TradFi around tokenization have become much more tangible. They now come to Ripple with real use cases teed up. And we also have, it won't be long before banks are ready for mass adoption of blockchain. Now, I also put out a post recently on X talking about mass adoption just like this. And I was actually quoting Anderson because he said, unpopular opinion, the big breakthrough using crypto in the real economy will not be retail based. He did everything to make sure Bitcoin would be adopted in the economy of El Salvador, yet it didn't happen. That should tell you something. My strong opinion is that it's largely a back-end product. And this is because of the El Salvador president really kind of adopting Bitcoin and talking about how it hasn't yet enjoyed the widespread adoption. And it's also the fact that, one, Bitcoin is very inefficient to use. Everyone will say, oh, but what about Lightning? What about this? What about that? These are layer 2 products and networks that you need to rely on that are very inefficient as well, but also very vulnerable to hacks and exploits. So nobody wants to really utilize that. It's very inefficient. It's terrible, in fact. Bitcoin is not yet at the point in time where it should be for transactional use cases. And I feel as though a lot of Bitcoin maxis and even developers are, they're kind of in denial of that. They don't want to accept it. But it's not a biased thing. It's not, something that for example, it's not me saying like, oh, Bitcoin sucks because I like XRP or I like a different digital asset. No, it's me being realistic here. Bitcoin sucks for transactional use cases, and that's just it. And there is some Bitcoin developers out there that will even openly admit, like, listen, Bitcoin's not there yet for transactional use cases. We just don't have the tech yet. We're not there yet. But beyond that, I did say very unpopular opinion here, but I'm just going to say it. The biggest breakthrough using crypto will be the biggest banks that are already banking billions of people onboarding their clients to crypto tech through their banking UI. Everyone hates to hear this, that live in the past, but at this point, every Bitcoin maxi has welcomed institutionalization with open arms. Mass adoption of this tech is the end user not realizing they are using the tech. This can easily happen by having them use names they are already familiar with, just with a different UI, but a much more efficient process than ever before. And think about it, right? These big banks don't have to change their business model at all. They can tap into these new technologies, enjoy the fact that they don't have to pay absurd fees. The, cost for them to run these processes are a lot lower. They can charge the clients the same exact, amount that they've been charging them, and they can just eat even more. They don't have to change anything. But all of a sudden, the end user is seeing a lot more efficient processes without realizing the new tech that they're using. But also think about it like this. All of those big banks, all of those big institutions, a lot of them have already been working with Ripple for so long. And I'm sure that they already have these types of use cases already teed up, just like Marcus and Ventura told you guys. But also tokenization. So over here, we have from XRP drops, and we have Ripple's XRP Ledger might be the hottest thing in crypto right now. #1 infrastructure provider. And this was an article by U.Today, and we have Ripple's XRP Ledger might be the hottest thing in crypto right now, #1 infrastructure provider. And this was actually building upon what David Schwartz said. And over here we have from Chad Steingraber, year 2, day 24. Ripple highlighted an example of how institutional access to DeFi is expanding through tokenization of real-world assets. The goal is to become the #1 global infrastructure provider for the new financial network, using XRP as the underlying asset. And here we have Ripple CTO David Schwartz emphasized that Ripple is now focusing on integrating XRP Ledger's technical and financial features into its own operations to offer clients secure and compliant DeFi benefits globally. And that's their end goal, right? They want XRP and the XRP Ledger plug and played into everything that Ripple is doing. And that's exactly what will happen, in my opinion, as well. That's why we see such a big focus from Ripple. I mean, think about it like this. Why would Ripple want to be hiring around institutional DeFi initiatives on the XRP Ledger? Why has Ripple been pushing the XRP Ledger for so long? Why have they been such a big supporter of the XRP Ledger for so long? It's because they want to fully embrace the XRP Ledger for what it is, and they want to embrace and utilize XRP as well for what it is. This is how we get to the point where Ripple and everything Ripple does is all based around and utilizing the XRP Ledger and XRP. I truly believe that this is the future as well. Now, outside of this, remember that this is all centered on institutional DeFi, specifically around tokenization. Over here, 2023 global GDP 105 trillion, 26.9 trillion in the US alone. Ripple's Brooks Entwistle highlights the World Economic Forum's prediction that 10% of the global GDP will be tokenized by 2027. So if that's the case, it's roughly over $10 trillion by 2027 that will be tokenized. Imagine what the network effect of that will do to this space and the assets that are going to be utilized around tokenization. Because right now, everyone forgets that Bitcoin's price is only as high as it is because of the retail network effect of retail buying and selling and trading it, as well as, institutions as well. But the network effect allowed Bitcoin to be worth well over $1 trillion plus. Now we welcome in 10% of the global GDP by 2027, which is well over 10 trillion. And now that's also trading 24/7, 365 on some of these networks. And think about all of the other use cases that could be, lined up through tokenization as well. You have, DeFi initiatives through yield creation, through tokenized real estate, for an example. Like all of these big, all of these big initiatives now can become a reality because we have so much tokenized on chain. So what does this do to these underlying assets like XRP or HBAR or XLM and things like that? Well, they become extremely valuable. They grow in value. They grow in users. That's how we get to the point of, these utility projects becoming very valuable. But also, if we go over here, we have Brooks Entwistle regarding, the World Economic Forum's prediction that 10% of the global GDP will be tokenized by 2027. And when we put this into perspective with, the idea that Ripple highlighted an example of how institutional access to DeFi is expanding through tokenization of real-world assets and how their goal is to become the #1 global infrastructure provider for the new financial network, you kind of see the overall path here being forged. But check this out.
It can be around central bank digital currencies. It can be around NFTs. We actually believe and put a lot of faith behind this World Economic Forum report that says that just a huge percent, 10% of the world's GDP could be tokenized by 2027 in some form or another.
And that's why, as we really kind of look at what Marcus Infinger was telling us about how these institutions are embracing tokenization and how it's more bullish than the ETFs, it is. Everyone is distracted by the ETFs. Nobody's focused on tokenization. Like, everyone should be focused on tokenization. That's the overall, thing to be really kind of looking at, because that's the value. That's all the value. Now, Brooks Entwistle has been very vocal about what's happening around Ripple and what's coming. Over here, we have Ripple is having conversations with central banks around the world weekly, if not daily now. Check it out.
Whether or not you're on the services side, the plumbing side, approaching it, that want to have some elements of this potential big market for central bank digital currencies. I'll let Brian talk to the U.S. element of this, but what I will say, an observation that we have, and like many others, we have a business that is in almost a consulting business to governments that are trying to take some early steps in this. And I'm looking at my daughter who's in the front row, who's a big mountain girl as well, loves Bhutan, has spent time there. Our first MOU with a country that actually was interested in this was Bhutan. Because number one, the king could mandate that the central bank should look at a central bank digital currency. Two, every one of their transactions in their financial system runs via India, like their trade routes, given where they are on the subcontinent. And three, it's a young population that's regionally digital savvy, and they can do some interesting things. And so as we kind of go around the world and have these conversations, which are happening weekly, if not daily now, with interested central banks, it's not always the banks that are on the big banks around the world, central banks that are much further down the road.
Now, why is this important to know? Well, because if we think about this, okay, if they're having conversations with central banks around the world weekly, if not daily, and we're talking about all of these major, nations around the world and all these central banks that are tied to these big nations around the world, it puts into perspective that, yes, there's CBDCs that are going to be happening. CBDCs are also tokenized, government-issued stablecoins. Remember what CBDCs actually are, that are on-chain. Ripple is already in discussions with, I think, like 30 or so confirmed. We don't know how many exact, but can we tack on another 10? Sure. 40. Make it 40. If they're having conversations with them daily, would 20 be too crazy? All right, now we're at 50 central banks. Like, that's how not only large Ripple really is, but it also shows you how significant the network of, I don't want to say like, oh, hey, like we have all of these big players under the belt of Ripple already. No, because we can't confirm that. But the networking of Ripple is next level. It's something unheard of in the space. In fact, I would argue that Ripple is so far ahead than every other player in the space simply because of how much they have been networking for years and years and years. This is also why we look at Ripple and we look at Ripple Net or Ripple Payments in this aspect now, and we look at how big that network actually is. It's a network of institutions. It's an institutional network that is comprised of major central banks, fintech companies that are actually working with major banks. You look at Accenture and Finastra that are on that, list, or Volante that also have ties back to, thousands of banks. Like, think about how massive the domino effect and the network effect of Ripple Payments actually is. So as we do look at this tokenized economy that's becoming a reality and how these institutions are already embracing tokenization, Ripple does stand at the forefront of all of this. And I do believe that they will be very successful in their goal of becoming the #1 infrastructure provider as well. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you guys did enjoy the video, definitely leave a like, subscribe, turn notifications on because more free content. You guys are more than welcome to follow me on Twitter and join the free Discord down in the description below. And with that being said, this has been Nick. Thanks for watching. Peace out.